Audience capture is what happens when you post content and then when people are commenting and telling you what they like and dislike about you, and maybe you'll even get to the point where other people are making content about you, saying what they like and dislike about you. When you have so many people who are giving their input on you and they're positively and negatively reinforcing your character traits, that can start to change who you actually are. Because chances are, if you're watching this, you're like a masculine guy who's willing to change himself to get better results in work, right? So that's like just the pinnacle of being a masculine man. You're willing to like transform your own self, your personal self, for your work. It just gets kind of tricky when you're a content creator, because when you post content, the masses can give their viewpoints on you. Especially if your content is quite personal, like mine is on my main channel. You know, if you're someone who's just a bit of a entertainment guy and you're not really talking about yourself, then it's not so much. But if you are someone who's talking about yourself and it's very personal, it's very authentic, naturally a lot of people will hate or they'll love parts of you and they'll be vocal about it in the comments. The problem is, you'll read some of those comments, you'll see those videos or the content that people have made about you and start to think like, oh, maybe I should listen to them, maybe I should be that way because I'd be able to get more views and business success. But when you do that, you're getting captured by the audience. The reason why this is bad is because if you get captured by the audience, you start going down a path that was not actually authentic for you, and you start living this lie. You're wearing this mask to just be like this puppet, this little dancing monkey for the audience, and you're losing the real you. Do you remember how on this channel, in previous videos, I've told you that there's no value at all at looking at like the YouTube analytics or the comments, and this is one of the reasons. Because if there's any little bit of a benefit of looking at the comments and YouTube Studio, the trade-off is just not worth it. Of like, you can literally lose yourself. Let me give you an example. Like, let's say there's a live streamer and he's just, you know, streaming himself, talking, whatever. But then when he gets into a bit more of an angry rant, more people start watching and more people start engaging and the chat starts flying up. That's like positively reinforcing it. He's going to think, oh, I'll get more business success when I'm ranting angrily. Or he'll do silly shit, like, you know, he'll be like a nuisance in public, and again, more people will be responding in the chat, sending in donations, and that will positively reinforce him to be like that Asbo little retard, you know, the antisocial behavior kind of little retard who's in public just causing like disorder and being chaotic and whatever. But he's doing that because he thinks that's what the audience wants. What he's not realizing is that's not actually the real him. He's just like doing, you know, he's a dancing monkey. He's like a bully victim, and all the bullies like punching him in the arm saying, go on, keep dancing. And he's like trying to dance, and he's got Stockholm syndrome, almost pretending that he's like enjoying this. The danger of this is happening to you as we speak. If you're posting content and you're reading the comments, which almost every creator does, I recommend not ever reading the comments, not checking the analytics or anything, because this invisible reinforcement of your certain kinds of behavior will be taking place. I guarantee you are like 10% going down this path minimum right now. If you're posting content and you are the type of guy who reads the comments that you get, you've got your notifications turned on, which is basically every content creator that I know, apart from, you know, the massive ones, but they still end up reading through their comments and everything. You start living this really inauthentic life, and you know what the real problem with this is? You actually end up getting less success overall, because you start living that inauthentic life that's a bit of a mask, and usually that mask will be one of those, like, eventually it'll be one of those quite cringe internet personalities where, you know, everything is just over bloated, whatever. And these days a lot of people are preferring a lot of the sort of realistic people on social media. It makes sense because we're all consuming content on YouTube and Instagram, and most people are lonely, so they want like a bit of a sort of parasocial relationship, or they even want like a bit of a sort of entertainment or whatever. They want to see a real human being, and this is for the customers and even the buddies as well, you know, the two types of people who could watch your videos. Basically all this to say, like, if you post content and you're reading these comments, you are changing yourself. For what? For who? Who are the type of people who are commenting about you? Do you think they're like the upstanding members of society? Do you think they're actually doing like an accurate assessment of your character? Do you think they're going to buy your programs? Probably not. The type of people who consume and they just comment, they're usually not the customers. They're usually like let's be honest, they're usually not very like successful people. Very successful people often don't consume that much content, and also don't actually comment and engage on it as well. So you'll become almost like a dancing monkey for the consumers. And you've got to be really careful and think, that's actually crazy. Like, you have come to terms with the fact that, you know, your family and your friends can influence who you are, right? You believe that phrase that you're the average of the 5 people you spend time with. You completely believe that. And so you're actually quite wary of spending time with maybe family or old friends, because you know that their values rub off on you, and maybe that's not the direction you want to go to in life. But then you've got to question, like, who are the people leaving comments? Who are the people reacting to you? Are they more successful than you are? Are they as successful as, like, your mentor is? Probably not. That's a black pill in some ways. It's like you look at some comments and you're like, it's probably a guy who's got depression who wrote that. Like, statistically, that's actually likely. It's probably someone with depression who's ejaculated, like masturbated today, who's not financially well off, who's actually not that intelligent, and he's developing diabetes. And that's who is basically throwing a stone in the new, you know, like the sort of voting system of who you should become. And you're allowing that to happen. In fact, you're actually like pushing it forward more and more and more. Before you know it, you've become someone who you're just not. And how long can you play that game for? Because it's exhausting. How long can you play this game for where you just live to the standards of other people? At some point, you're gonna crack and you're gonna start to show the real you. And that's when this audience that you've built up completely splinters, because they believed you were one kind of way. Then you show the real you, and a lot of these guys are like, oh, well, I don't like this guy anymore. I wanted the dancing monkey. I wanted him to be this way. I wanted him to be that way. And now he's pretending he's here. And then it happens again and again and again. So do you see how the only way to produce content is to basically press record and just speak as you actually are, with absolutely no mask at all? Now, you should definitely, you know, have some kind of boundaries. You don't want to be 100% honest, otherwise you might dox yourself, or you might expose people in your life who, you know, you don't want to give away their privacy or whatever. So of course, you don't need to be 100% honest, but you probably want to be pretty fucking authentic. And so, for example, if you swear in your normal life, maybe you should swear on camera, because if you think to yourself, oh yeah, we might not swear on camera, then you're already slightly changing yourself, slightly. If you are a sort of happy, smiley guy in public, then you should be like that in your content. This is one of the mistakes I made. When people meet me in real life, one of the things they say is like, you're quite similar to how you are in your content, but in real life, you're just happier and you're nicer. Like, quite a lot of people have said that to me, and it makes me think, like, yeah, like, I end up, you know, getting into these emotional rants and whatever, but I often don't show anywhere near as much how much I am like a smiley, happy guy who's making jokes and everything in person. Because, you know, the topics I talk about are often quite serious, but I don't often end up conveying that. Basically, when someone watches your content and they get to know you in person, or what might even be better is people who know you in person, when they watch your content, they should see a 100% reflection on your content. They should be like, yep, that's exactly you. If you are a funny guy 27% of the time in person, you should be funny 27% of the time in your content. That's interesting, isn't it? Because that's like the most real you could be. And then, you know what's beautiful? Any amount of audience you gain will actually be here for the long term, because it's real. They actually like the real you. You don't have to, like, you know, sit there and try and talk like Hamza or anything, or try and like do the Andrew Tate, like, oh, masculine thing. You don't have to. If that's not who you actually are, if you're a bit of like an introvert, a bit of a silent guy, you can still record content and blow the fuck up, talking like exactly how you talk. This, how I'm talking to you right now, is exactly how I talk in person. You know, when I'm like in a bit of a ranting mode, you know, with some friends, I've been talking about fat loss or whatever, and I'm like, you know, telling my points. But often I'm a bit of a smiley, happy, loud guy. I like to just turn my brain off when I'm in public. And sometimes I don't do that. And so you don't see the complete real me, which, if I did that, when you think about it, imagine if I showed you more of the sort of funny side of me, you would probably like me more, wouldn't you? Do you see how it's interesting how when we start to wear the mask, when we get captured by the audience and we start to appeal to what we think they want, you know what's happening, which is actually really insidious? You don't show the real you which actually would have attracted people to buy from you more. Like, think about that specific fact we're talking about here, where in person, I'm actually more happy, funny, and pleasant and positive, smiling and stuff, right? If I showed you that in my content, you'd probably like me more, right? Because it's an attractive trait, right? For a long time, I've done more of the sort of angry drill sergeant kind of, vibe of my content. And that's a bit of a mask, even though I talk like that in person, maybe just not all the time. If I showed you proportionally the real me on my content, you probably would have been more likely to buy from me. Do you see how interesting that is? Where you might be missing out on sales because you're not actually leaning into some of those attractive traits that you have, because you've convinced yourself that you have to be some kind of way on camera. A lot of guys who watch me have convinced themselves that you've got to speak in that like masculine Hamza, Andrew Tate kind of way, and you don't. When I review my students' content, so I have that program, which is top link in the description, I review like my students' YouTube videos, I tell them, oh, maybe you should try this, whatever. And every time I see this, I always tell them, I'm like, bro, like, that's not you, no offense, but like, you're nowhere near the level to be speaking like this, giving like, this hard advice to other guys. You don't even look like a masculine guy. You're not even Jack. Like, what are you doing? Why are you speaking like me? And they're like, oh, well, I just thought I just kind of have to. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, just speak how you would to people in your life. Think about it in terms of percentages. When you're in conversations with people, what percentage of those are you in this angry kind of like drill sergeant kind of, loud way? For me, it's actually fairly high, because I'll often like end up just coaching random guys I meet, and they'll say like, oh, with business, whatever. And I'll start like ranting about shit, and we get into those conversations because that's the type of guy I am. But for you, maybe not so much. Can you remember the last time you started ranting to like a group of guys, giving them advice? Maybe you do, right? But maybe it's like, what, 5% of your total conversations. Do you see how if you're making that like 90% of your content, then you're wearing this mask and you're attracting people who are like watching it thinking, who the fuck is this guy? Why is he talking like this? You're not at that level yet. People can smell the inauthenticity of you from your content. And that's one of the reasons why you're limited in your growth right now. You're stuck at like 100, 200 views. When you are able to just express exactly how you are in the real world on camera, that is when you will blow up. And I'm telling you, every single time you check the social media analytics, every single time you check the comments, I'm telling you, you're taking one step away from that pure authenticity. And you are literally losing money, losing followers. You might be gaining new followers, but they're not going to buy from you and they're not going to stick around. And when you do express the real you, they're going to leave as well. Really, all you have is like, you've got to just fucking actually show the real you. The skill of YouTube and the skill of being a content creator is to try to show 100% the real you in your content. When you're a beginner, this is way easier. One, because there's less people who are, leaving comments or whatever. But two, you haven't had that much of this audience capture yet. When this gets serious is when you're years down the line, and you sometimes have to ask yourself, like, who am I? Who am I? That's like, it's such an interesting question to ask. Am I an angry guy? Because I've got 1,000 videos on my channel where I seem kind of angry. Am I? You've got to ask yourself those questions. What would your best friend, or what would your mother, or what would your teacher, how would they see you? And maybe you just take the mix of all of them. So it's not just how your best friend would see you, because you might be attracting buddies, and that might be a bit of a too personal kind of soft, whatever kind of personality traits. But how does maybe your little brother see you, if you've got one, or some younger guys that how do they see you? How do you speak to them? Imagine maybe 2-3 people in your life. Think about how they see you and create that to be like, okay, that's probably like the real me. That's the version of you that if you express online, you will do so well. And please just take my advice. Be extremely careful checking any of the analytics, checking any of the comments, reading them, whatever. Every now and then I do it too. It happens to all of us. It's almost like an addiction for a lot of people. I do it when I'm just bored and I want some dopamine, and I like start replying to people in the comments, and it feels productive till I tell myself like, it's not. You can blow up on social media without replying to a single comment. It's not actually productive, even though a lot of people think it is. And in fact, the trade-off of the potential risk of getting captured by the audience is just so high. Maybe the best thing is you almost live like this weird detached monk who records content. It goes up online and you don't even know if it's been performing well. You don't even know if you're getting views. You don't even know if you're getting subscribers. You're just fucking uploading content. That's it. If you lived like that, and then you also got someone to review your content and to give you some tips on how to like just sort of perform better or be more professional, that would be the best case scenario. What you want, when you really think about it, is a professional who's successful in this field to look at your content and give you advice. What you don't want is consumers and people who are, you know, they're watching content, they're leaving comments. You don't want those people to be giving you advice on how to be in your business, right? When you think about it, when you check comments, it's almost like they become your mentors. And you don't want random fucking YouTube commenters to become your mentors, because they're not actually like aligning to what's going to help you to actually do well in your business. This is why my program is so fucking powerful, where I will do that. Instead of you looking at the analytics, instead of you looking at the comments, I look at the content of my students and I tell them what I think will be best for them to post, or the kind of vibe they should step into, or the kind of videos or niche or the product they should make. That's what's powerful about my program. And I think that's better. Instead of getting captured by the hundreds or thousands of the audience who are just consumers, and they're not going, like, chances are just statistically they're not going to be very successful people. They're probably not even going to be very happy people. You just learn from a mentor instead. That's the top link in the description. I recommend you just join my program and you turn off all the data shit on your YouTube. You get those extensions that block out the YouTube studio, the view count, all of that, and just let me and my community inside my program. We just do it for each other in this way. It's like, it's a very educational, non-emotional, very logical kind of community where we're just, you know, we're tracking data. We're looking at, okay, what kind of content you should make, whatever. That's a lot better than just like you being at the whims of the masses who are leaving comments. So you can go check the program out if you're interested. Goodbye. Mwah.